Today, we're diving into a really thought-provoking essay by Zhui Feng of Life Chanyan. It's called Walking Out of Protective Mechanisms, and it gets you thinking about a tricky question. What if the very things that are supposed to keep us safe, our families, our beliefs, even our countries, are actually holding us back?
The essay kicks off with this incredibly powerful image. An eggshell is all about protection, right? It's there to nurture life. But if that chick doesn't break free at exactly the right time, that same protective wall becomes its tomb. And that one idea right there is the key to the whole essay. Protection has an expiration date.
All right, so to really unpack this, we're going to walk through 5 key ideas from the essay. We'll start with what the author calls a law of nature, and then see how that applies to our human cocoons. From there, we'll explore the danger of staying, what's on the other side in life beyond the walls, and we'll wrap up with a final warning. So let's start with that first idea, that chicken the egg. It's not just a clever metaphor. The author argues that it's a real-world example of a fundamental law of nature, something that applies to pretty much all living things. The key term here is protective mechanism. And look, according to Zhu Feng, this isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, it's essential. Think of a chrysalis for a butterfly or that shell for the chick. You need them for the transformation to happen. But here's the crucial part. They are meant to be temporary. They're shelters, not permanent homes. Okay, so here's where things get really interesting. The author takes this big idea from the natural world and points it right back at us, at human society and some of our most basic institutions. The essay argues that we build our own versions of these cocoons. It starts with the family, which nurtures us when we're completely helpless. Then maybe it expands to our community or clan. For a lot of people, religion provides a kind of spiritual and moral shell. And then there's the nation itself. According to the author, these are our eggshells. And the stakes, the author claims, are just as high. Choosing to stay inside these structures forever isn't seen as being loyal or stable. No, it's seen as a recipe for stagnation, a kind of slow decline, both for us as individuals and for humanity as a whole. So what does that stagnation actually look like? What's the real cost of all that comfort? Well, the essay is pretty blunt about the consequences for anyone who chooses the safety of the cocoon over the risk of breaking out. So the text forces us to ask this critical question. What actually happens if you never leave, if you just choose that comfort and safety forever? The author's answer? Well, it's uncompromising. This slide just lays it out so clearly. You've got 2 paths, right? On the left, if you stay put, you become what the author calls a giant infant, an adult in body, but someone who never truly matures. It's a state of decline, described frankly as being a living dead person. But the path on the right, breaking free, that's what leads to real growth, to vitality, and to what the essay calls sublimation. And just to really drive home this idea of the living dead, the author makes this incredibly provocative claim, and I'm quoting directly here. Patriots are dead people, and so are religious followers who have been immersed in a religion for a lifetime. It's a really stark way of framing it, basically saying that this kind of lifelong, unquestioning devotion isn't growth. It's a failure to move past a protective stage. But it's not all doom and gloom. The essay doesn't just focus on the dangers. After all that, it paints this really vivid picture of what's waiting on the other side for anyone who's brave enough to actually break out. So what's the reward for taking that huge risk? Well, simply put, a bigger life. A world that feels more expansive, more vibrant, way more full of potential. The author argues that by leaving those initial protections, you don't lose your home. You actually discover that the entire universe can become your home. But, and this is a huge but, there's a critical rule. The escape has to come from within. Just like that chick pecking its way out of the shell, the will to emerge has to be your own. The author is very clear that if the shell is broken by some outside force, it's not liberating, it's destructive. It ends up killing what's inside. So this is presented as a deeply personal journey. And that brings us to the essay's big conclusion. It doesn't just end on a note of personal philosophy. No, it zooms way out to give this final, pretty heavy warning for all of humanity. So the author throws out this just astonishing number to show how big of a problem this really is. We're not talking about a small fraction of people here. The essay states that 99% of people are currently living inside one of these cocoons, in what it calls a half-dead state.
So you see, the big point here is that the author sees this as a collective crisis, not just an individual problem. The essay wraps up with this really urgent call, saying that unless a group of awakened ones steps up to lead the way out of these old structures, humanity itself could be heading for a catastrophe.
And so the essay leaves all of us with a powerful and very personal question. It forces you to look at the structures in your own life, your family, your beliefs, your identity, and ask a tough question. Is my cocoon still a sanctuary, or has it become a prison? It's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining me.